All right, we're back. I'm not going to let the music run. I'll just let it run out in the background. But here was my point in our earlier discussion in the last segment. The goal of the idea here is that you want things that, especially in terms of medical supplies, that you're going to be able to use on a routine basis and is going to keep. But you want things, basics, bandages. You want, alcohol. You want peroxide. You want basic cleanliness, bacitracin. And by the way, don't go to the store and buy, those 10 of those little tiny bottles. Go to a local farm supply place and buy the same bacitracin that they sell you for, to buy a quart of it equivalent in a local drugstore is going to cost you, $80 by the time you buy 30 little bottles. The alternative is you can go to the local farm store and you can get the same thing in a quart for like $8 or $9. It's the same stuff, no difference. I'm no doctor, so don't take this as medical advice. Use your own head and don't accuse me of playing doctor. And I don't want to hear about any lawsuits. I followed your advice, and my little baby got an infection in her pinky. You're an intelligent, articulate adult. Use the God-given brain that you have. The point is simply this. There's tons of information out there on the web about what you can do and how you can do it. Go to Jack Spirko's The Survival Podcast. By the way, I posted an article up this morning on America's Voice Now about an interview I did with Jack last week. And I wrote an article about it, and it's something you absolutely have to hear. But go over to his website, The Survival Podcast, and make sure that you are learning about what you need to do to be able to take care of your family with food that you grow locally and those kinds of things. Jack's got a great website out there, and I think he charges like $5 a month, and you get all kinds of background info. I mean, there's plenty you can read without joining, but if you're a member of his organization for $5 a month, you get a stunning amount of information. And then there's another one out there, the Survival Blog, and that's with James Wesley Rawls. Both of those are great. They all have, and some of this stuff is related to bug out, but a lot of it is just related to practical application. Keep stuff on hand like rope, twine, string, nails. I mean, you guys, I'm telling you, this is the barter equivalent of currency when you need it. And those who don't have it will sure be sorry, and they'll be willing to pay almost anything to get it. Lumber. I mean, the idea of having stuff like that stored away and in use will more than pay for itself. So, go to springcreekbeef.com, springcreekbeef.com, or go to theheritagehills.com, theheritagehills.com. Those are websites where you can get all natural, 100% organic, grass-fed, and finished beef. No grain. Grain, for the record, if you don't know anything about cows, grain kills cows. When they're ready to butcher this cow that now weighs 1,800 pounds and looks about as bloated as a tick, he's already half dead when they butcher them because they've been shoving grain down his mullet for the past, months. And that's not a natural food source for cows. They're ruminants. They don't eat grain. But it fattens them up, and that's what they're trying to do is get all that marbled fat on there, right? And one, it raises the price of it, and two, you're willing to pay $4, $5, $6 a pound for it. And in addition to that, it makes it taste better. Well, all that's well and good, except, frankly, the cow is virtually dead on his feet before they kill him. You get grass-fed and finished beef. It's all natural. It's all organic. No hormones, no antibiotics, no additives, none of that stuff. They just, it's the same grass it's the same beef that your great-grandparents were eating, right? TheHeritageHills.com and Spring Creek Beef. Two friends of mine, and I know both of them very, very well. So you can bank on the fact that if you buy from them, you're getting something that you can trust. All right. Kansas has recently come out with a bill that blows me away. The Kansas House has got 12 co-sponsors for a bill that will felonize you if you report an incident of police brutality or police abuse and he's found innocent of the charge. The problem is that he's found innocent of the charge by an internal investigation only. This is House Bill number 2698. I don't live in Kansas. For the record, I don't have any skin in the game. I'm just pointing out that if you live in Kansas, or you are you have a state that is trying to shove something like this down your throat, you guys ought to be in open, bold revolt. House number 2698 requires citizens to swear an affidavit before they submit a complaint against an officer. Okay? So you have to swear out an affidavit. You can't just make a complaint by phone and the chief begins to investigate and so forth and so on. You have to swear out an affidavit. Now, if any of the complaint is found to be erroneous at a later date, you can be prosecuted with a felony. I mean, this is insane. Meanwhile, he is only investigated by internal affairs. And here's the problem. It gets worse. The bill says, first of all, that no complaint will be investigated unless the affidavit is attached to the complaint, number one. Number two, the bill states that any police officer is accused of abuse will never be questioned. Listen to this, folks. This is insane. They will never be questioned until they have read and reviewed all aspects of the complaint, including the affidavit. Now, so basically here's the deal. Let's just envision this for a moment. You say, a police officer pulled me over and he touched me inappropriately on the side of the road, right? There's video camera in the dashboard, dash cam. Your friend sitting in the car videotaped it out the back window. And you are required to fill out an affidavit that this person, touched you in an inappropriate way, made some comments, whatever the case may be, right? All right. Now the officer is given an opportunity, before he's ever even questioned, to read the affidavit and the complaint before he ever has to say what actually happened. And then on top of that, he's only going to be investigated by his own internal affairs organization. And unbelievably, if he's found innocent of the charge, the charge can never be reviewed by anyone above him, including, you can't bump it up to the state police and say, hey, the department's corrupt. I want to move this up the ladder to the state police and have somebody objective look at this. It's banned. I mean, how insane is that? It gets even worse. First of all, allowing the officer to read and see all the evidence against him before he even tells his side of the story is exactly the opposite of what they do when they're investigating you. Imagine if, just before an officer pulls you in for questioning and slams you down in the chair and handcuffs you to the table and says, we've got 3 people in the other room who witnessed you commit the crime. Imagine if they're required to give you a piece of paper that says, he's lying, we really don't have 3 witnesses against you. Really? When ever is a suspect entitled to read all the evidence and find out all the evidence against them before they're investigated, questioned, interviewed, whatever? You can't even get that from discovery when you're going to court. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, this is so over the top that the 12 co-sponsors of this in Kansas should be tarred and feathered by the Kansans. I'm telling you, this is so over the top. This is tyranny like you have no idea. When you read this bill, and I encourage you to do so, and you read this article, which will be attached to this rant, you should be so, I don't care if you're a Kansan. Every member of America should be on the phone to these Kansas co-sponsors and tearing them up. Oh, it gets worse. I haven't even told you the best parts yet. I mean, If your hair isn't standing on end and you're not foaming at the mouth and smoke isn't coming out of your ears already, it gets better. The bill mandates that every investigation that is done is permanent and final. So here's the deal. You got a police department of 20 officers. They got an internal affairs thing of one guy or two guys who are also serve double duty as regular officers. You accuse Officer A of inappropriate activity. He's investigated by officers X, Y, and Z. They know him. They all go to each other's houses. They all party together, have some beer on Friday night. They find him innocent of the charge, and no one can ever look at the charge above them again. Ever, ever, ever. And, by the way, now that they've found him innocent, you can be charged with a felony for an erroneous charge against a police officer. A felony. So, if one cop in the agency finds that the other cop is innocent, no agency would be allowed to review the case, even if it's a higher authority. Now, let's recognize something. In almost every police investigation, the problem is that the cops are investigating themselves and invariably find themselves innocent. And these abuse cases, almost invariably, they side with the cop. Well, situation on the ground was such that he had to make an immediate decision, of course, and he had to punch your client 816 times in the face, break 9 bones in his cheek, and, because he was in fear for his life. Of course your client could have injured him with that straw from his Coca-Cola cup. That could be a deadly weapon in the right hands, counselor. I mean, come on. Washington Post, Bradley Balco. Here's what he says. He describes the bill as awful. I describe it as a little bit worse than that. Awful. He uses awful, A-W-F-U-L. I use the phrase awful, O-F-F-A-L, right? You know what awful is? If you don't, word of the day, go look it up. Okay, O-F-F-A-L. It's what's found on the midden heap. Okay, so you're welcome to file a complaint, says Radley Balco, but the cop you're complaining about will be investigated by his colleagues, and only his colleagues. If they find that he did nothing wrong, as they nearly always do, you could be arrested for a felony. I'm sure that people file false police claims against police. I'm sure that people file false claims and complaints against police officers quite often. This bill will almost certainly discourage that, but it will almost also certainly prevent legitimate victims of police abuse from coming forward too. Now, here it gets even better. There's a website out there called Kansas Exposed, and here's what they did in response to this. They took a look at a bunch of the claims that were out there in Wichita, and out of all of the racial profiling complaints that were made, out of 100 complaints made, the police rejected 100% of them as unfounded. Hold on, this is amazing. So there were 100 complaints of racial profiling made, and all 100 were rejected as false. Really? Now, under this bill, House Bill 2698, this ought to be known as the Treason Act of Kansas, right? The Police State Treason Act of Kansas. There you go. That's what it should be called. I ought to make an anagram out of that, right? Somehow or other, Patsy ought to come out of that. Police State Tyranny Act. I mean, somebody who's good with anagrams come up with a good one. The Patsy Act. All of the people who made those complaints, 100 of them, and 100 incidents in which the police rejected those complaints as unfounded, would now be subject to criminal prosecution on a felony charge for having made the complaint. And here's the worst part. There's not a single other agency above, the hillbilly Yoakum Police Internal Affairs Division that's enabled to review the case. No one. You can't go to the Attorney General and say, Kansas Attorney General, this cop literally beat the living tar out of me with a billy club, and I got it on videotape, and his buddies found him innocent. But when you watch this tape, and you know what? The Attorney General is going to have to say, you're absolutely right. I watched the videotape, and there is no doubt in my mind that this officer abused his authority, beat you unnecessarily when your hands were cuffed behind your back, pounded your face into the dirt, but my hands are tied because our house passed a law that says we can't do anything to you or to him. Here's where it gets even better. This bill was first issued by the House Committee on Corrections and Juvenile Justice. I mean, you can't tell me it gets any dirtier than this, folks. The House Committee on Corrections and Juvenile Justice. Now, there are over a dozen representatives which sit on this committee, and they've introduced and are currently sponsoring the bill. I tried to find their names. I'm having a hard time finding it. Of course, I got so much research to do in the morning, I can't spend hours trying to figure out what these 12 traitors look like. But you can find out, and I encourage you, if you live in Kansas, to do so. And then I encourage every member in Kansas, every citizen in Kansas, to go to war against your house. You got it. Go to war. I'm telling you, any state that lets this go past, every member of the government should be permanently removed with prejudice and labeled as dishonorably discharged, tarred and feathered, and exiled from the state. Harsh, tough. Don't like it? Tough. No, I'm not inciting violence, NSA, so you can take your stupid little mystic program, because I'm already recording the conversation. We'll address you in the next segment, and you can't say that I am. Guys, you have to recognize something. The level of tyranny that is being shoved down our throats every single day now is so abusive, so egregious, so obvious, Helen Keller and Stevie Wonder can see it. Why are you pretending it's not happening? The truth of the matter is, and I got to admit, Kansas was one of the first states to pass the Second Amendment Preservation Act. What the heck is going on over there? They passed the Second Amendment Preservation Act. Their Attorney General said to Eric Holder went to him and said, you can't override federal law. Federal law has supremacy. And their Attorney General said to him, oh yeah? Get out of my face. Don't come in my state. Don't come in here trying to pry guns out of our people's hands, or we'll charge you with a felony. Hip hip hooray for him. The heck are they doing with this? I mean, talk about tyranny and liberty in the same house. I mean, what the heck is going on in Kansas? Are you people insane? Who would sponsor such a thing? Who, with any good conscience, would sponsor something like this? It's so over the top. It's so ridiculous. It's so insane that anyone who would even think this up should be removed and labeled dishonorably discharged. They should have that tattooed on their forehead so they can't escape the label. A political dishonorable discharge, which exiles you from public service for life. Never again can you hold an office in the public. Never again can you have authority over anyone. I am tired of traitors, and I'm telling you, they just climbing out of the woodwork lately. All right, last but not least, this thing in Connecticut, if you're not following it, and you should be, we're still waiting for the state. The gauntlet's been thrown down, and basically here's what it says. You either enforce these strict new gun laws and confiscate these guns, or repeal the law. The state of Connecticut is operating in open tyranny against its own citizens. And if they attempt to go in there and confiscate weapons, you've got about 250,000, by best estimates, 250,000 people who have refused to comply. By the way, in New York State yesterday, they were burning the applications in a barbecue grill in protest. That was New York State, not New York City. But here's the way you're going to have to look at this. Statistically speaking, just as a scientific observation, if 250,000 people in Connecticut have said, I'm not playing the game, and I'm not turning in my guns, and I'm not registering them with you, and I'm not telling you how many magazines I've got, and I'm not giving you a list of the unserialized magazines so you couldn't tell whether I had 1 or 100 anyway, and I'm not participating in your little tyrannical game of confiscation through registration, nor am I turning in my weapon because I failed to play your registration game. Somehow, when they try to go and confiscate the weapons from 250,000 people, statistically speaking, the odds of there not being at least one violent confrontation are practically non-existent. And when that does occur, it's not going to be a hyper misunderstanding. It's going to be the opening gambit, the shot across the bow, the shot heard round the world, the new Concord and Lexington of the Second Civil War of America. Statistically speaking, there ain't no way you're going to take away the weapons from 250,000 homes. 250,000 homes. Right? You're not going to be able to do that without inciting violence in some way, shape, or form. Some Connecticutan, or whatever they call themselves, Connecticut, whatever you are in Canada, Connecticut. I'm sorry I'm butchering your name. But whatever they call you folks in Connecticut, one of you is going to stand up and say, not today, pow! And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be a tragedy. But your government is insistent on disarming you so that you can be railroaded to your own demise. One officer is going to grab somebody's wife, abuse somebody's kid, kick in somebody's door, and they're going to say, I had no idea it was a cop, and I fired at the first 3 guys in black who came through my door. And it's going to be on. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to tackle the NSA's brand new exposed program called Mystic. This is the one where they're actually listening to every conversation, recording them all for at least a 30-day span so that they can go back and look at them at their leisure. And they're actually recording the words. It's not just metadata. We'll be right back.